Imagine you live in a city that's losing population, what we refer to as a shrinking city. This is a city that was hit hard by the recession and industrial jobs loss, and there's a lot of vacant land in this city. And every day on your commute to work, you drive by one particular vacant lot, and it's owned by an out-of-state bank, and they've tried unsuccessfully to sell it. And so it's just sitting there, covered with weeds and trash, and you think to yourself, my commute would be a lot better if that were something other than a vacant lot. What if I planted a garden there? That could provide food to underserved members of the community, and it would look a lot nicer. So what's stopping you? What's constraining your behavior? Why haven't you planted that garden? So certainly time and money, the practical realities of everyday life, those have an effect on your behavior and what you do. But there are two other constraints on behavior that I want to talk about today, and these are laws and social norms. So first, laws. One reason that perhaps you haven't planted a garden on that lot is because it's not your property, right? Trespass is illegal. You could be fined or even go to jail if you're caught messing around on someone else's private property. Now, social norms, these are rules that are imposed or enforced not by the government, but by members of your community through the imposition of social sanctions. So when you break a law, you go to jail. If you violate a social norm, your friends and neighbors will gossip about you and exclude you from their social circles. So determining the law in a given situation is usually pretty straightforward, but figuring out social norms is a little more nuanced. And so I want to take a minute to talk about the interaction of law and social norms in the context of guerrilla gardening, this idea of planting a garden on property that's not yours. So the first possibility is that the law and the social norms are aligned. So just as trespass is illegal, your neighbors would look down on you if they saw you gardening on property that wasn't yours. The second possibility is that the law and the social norms conflict with one another. So despite the fact that trespass is illegal, your neighbors might think that the garden is an enhancement to the community, and that enhancement outweighs the fact that you're doing it on property that doesn't belong to you. So let's assume that this shrinking city that you inhabit is a progressive city. So the social norms are such that your neighbors think gardens are a great idea, right? We need more local food. We need more low-cost produce. And maybe they also agree with you that absentee landlords and out-of-state banks who aren't taking care of their property deserve to have it put to a more beneficial, efficient use by folks in the community, instead of it just laying there attracting crime and vagrancy and vermin. And so here's where we get into a gray area. Right? From an ethical perspective, if you want to undertake an action, and you think that action will improve your community, and your neighbors think it will improve your community, do you take that action even if it's illegal? Right? And where does morality come into it? Now, morality certainly informs our laws, but is every illegal action also immoral? I think most of us would agree that morality and law are not always aligned, right? And sometimes we see our social norms and our morals evolving so far beyond the law that we use that groundswell to force a change in the law, either through our elected representatives or through the courts. And we've seen this recently with respect to marriage equality. But getting back to urban land use in our shrinking city. So let's say that on that commute to work every day, when you pass that vacant lot, you're in your car, but you'd really like to ride your bike to work. But this shrinking city has no bike lanes. Now, there are formal legal processes in place to create bike lanes. The city might start by doing a traffic study, surveying different neighborhoods and constituencies to see where it would make sense or whether it would make sense to construct a bike lane. And if they decide to do it, then they would hire professionals to paint it, to stencil it. This can all take many, many months, many thousands of dollars. So let's say instead, one night you go down to the hardware store and you buy 2 cans of paint. And you paint the front tires of your car and drive along the right side of the road. Instant bike lane. It's great. You're excited, your neighbors are excited, no red tape, it cost you a mere 2 cans of paint. But is that action ethical? Right? We have formal legal processes in place for a reason. When we go through the city process, we ensure that the city consults with all different stakeholders, and they should be following some sort of legitimate public process. And this is the nature of a representative democracy, right? We have to put up with all this bureaucracy, but in the end, at least ostensibly, we should arrive at a more informed decision. But all of that bureaucracy, that can sometimes stifle innovation, right? It can drain us of our energy, and that can drain us of our desire to create and to innovate. And so we wind up in a strange situation because that seems to suggest that we need more guerrilla action, right? Do-it-yourself urbanism, transgressive actions. Let's all go paint illegal bike lanes and plant illegal gardens. No bureaucracy. Okay, but is that ethical, right? Is it okay for a sole individual who's supported by social norms in the community but not by the law to avoid that public process and take action on her own because she thinks it will benefit the community? It's a hard line, right? It's hard to draw that line. We want innovation. We want people to feel inspired to create change in their communities. We don't want to be weighed down by the process, but we don't want anarchy, or at least some of us don't, right? We want legitimacy, but we want innovation. We want change. So there's an old adage that says, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. There's another one that says, be the change you want to see in the world. But if we all go around changing things and violating the law in the process, but hoping we'll be forgiven because we're acting in compliance with social norms, do we run the risk of undermining the legitimacy of our communities? On the other hand, if we're taking action that's going to benefit our communities, that our neighbors agree will benefit our communities, and no one's suffering, what's the harm? And in fact, we might even do such a great job that we incentivize or inspire our local officials to follow our lead, and the law might change. So what do you think? The next time that you pass that vacant lot on your way to work, will you stop and plant a garden? Okay, thanks.